A budget debate overrun by concerns about the multi-million-dollar expansion planned for the runway at the Terence B. Lettsome International Airport. Now, several government legislators weighed in, and while they're not opposed to the project, what they're outrightly opposed to is the execution of this project at this time. Now, to help us take a look at these developments, as well as some of the facts surrounding why this project is so important to the BVI economy for the Dr. D. Orlando Smith administration at this time, Kathy Richards and I are being joined by Ken Silva of the BVI Beacon. Welcome, Ken.
Good morning.
Now, Kathy, this week things got really interesting in the House of Debate because government legislators, or several government legislators, dared to weigh in on a discourse that's already taking place in order to let their views about this airport expansion project known. And before we delve into what was said, let's just quickly take a look at what we can say about who stands where, at least for now. Now, in terms of being outrightly for the project, we know that this is the Premier's baby. And the Deputy Premier, who is the lead portfolio minister, is also in favor of the project. So too is 8th District Representative Marlon Penn and 9th District Rep Dr. Hubert O'Neill. Now, in the column against the execution of the project right now, 6th District Rep Alvaro Maduro Keynes, 5th District Rep Dolores Christopher, 2nd District Rep Melvin Turnbull, at-large Rep Archibald Christian, and another at-large Rep and Senior Cabinet Minister and former Finance Minister, who's now Health Minister, Ronnie Skelton. Now, in terms of who we can say exactly where they stand, Minister Vanterpool for Communications and Works and 4th District Rep, and at-large Representative and Education Minister Myron Walwyn. Kathy?
Yes, for certain. But what was interesting to note from Minister Walwyn is that he said that he too, like everyone else, had concerns about the project, but his forum to discuss those concerns was not the House of Assembly nor out in the public. He said he knew where to address those concerns and he did so. But in essence, he sees it as an important project, and the important thing is to knowing what, where, and when should we go forward with this.
And how.
And how, yes.
And at the end, the how and the when was a constant theme coming from the start of the debate last week, starting with Representatives Christopher and Maduro Keynes. But at the end of the day, when the Premier closed the debate, he responded to some of those concerns, not in detail, Kathy, but he responded, and basically the impression that we came away with is that at the end of the day, the Premier is still strongly in support of this project. Let's take a look at what the Premier said in the House.
We need to expand the airport, Madam Speaker. And I know that we've had a robust discussion about the need to expand the airport. I also know that we all agree that we need to expand the airport because we all understand the implications of that expansion to our economy. Airlift is important, and your government will continue to work towards the airlift. I know, Madam Speaker, that it is important that we have discussions on the various issues that have been raised by my colleagues, the various issues being raised by members of the public. And I know that once we all work together, we can have all these matters resolved, because I think we all understand and appreciate where we need to go as far as the airlift is concerned.
So, Kathy, there we have it, the Premier speaking as he has in the past on why this project is important.
Yes, and the key thing that he said there is that, yes, I've heard all the concerns. What he's appealing for, that they all come together, work on those concerns, and to see what's the way forward. But then also we had the only minister of government, senior minister of government, who was also a finance minister, who shed some critical light on his views as to why he think it should not go forward now.
And that's Health Minister Ronnie Skelton
Yes.
talking about whether or not the country's finances, in light of the financial protocol from the UK, can bear this. And he wasn't the only one. This has been a recurring theme coming out of
Yeah.
last week,
Yes.
Kathy. So let's hear what Minister Skelton told the House.
You know, we are not against the airport project, Madam Speaker. We are against the procedure and the way it is being funded. But, you know, let us find another way to get it done. But the Premier, the leader of government business, we want tourism, we want the financial, we want to boost tourism, we want to boost financial services. So therefore, we're going to find a way to get the airport done. But to go and borrow, direct borrowing by government, all of the money, then it becomes an issue here with the borrowing guidelines.
Ken, you heard it there from the former finance minister himself. What are your thoughts on what transpired over the past couple of days?
You know, and I'm a little confused by the minister's statements. I'm wondering if he knows something that we don't know, because on paper, all the plans that they've submitted show that the airport is affordable and that they'd still be in compliance with the protocols. So unless the minister knows something that we don't, it's hard to tell what's going on with that statement. It's pretty interesting. And also, sorry, I think it's a little troubling too that we keep hearing these vague statements about affordability, but government really hasn't explained what these concerns are. And you know, if there's discord in the House, that there's discussions going on behind closed doors, a lot more details are being spoken about. I think the public needs to be involved in these discussions.
And the Premier has said in the past that the public will be brought into these discussions, but that hasn't taken place yet. And now that legislators are weighing in and providing some sort of credence to some of these, to all of these concerns, particularly where the finances are concerned, whether or not local contractors will participate in the project. What people are saying is that it's high time that the public be allowed to weigh in so that we can have a better understanding, especially where, how is this project going to be funded, and is it best that the BVI government be the sole guarantor of this multi-million-dollar loan?
Absolutely. There hasn't been any public meetings for about 5 years, and at that time, Dr. Pickering already said the airport was a done deal. We've had to fight to get these studies about the airport project. The Beacon newspaper had to put in a FOIA request with the UK government to get one study from 2014 that the FCO did on the project. So it's just, you know, we're just asking for a little transparency is all.
And one of the things that we are able to do on the big story here, Ken, is to shed a little bit more light on these issues other than the surface information that's out there. And speaking of studies, what have you been able to glean since you've been perusing these studies quite a lot, especially the economic impact assessment and the business case, which the Premier spoke very little of, but somewhat of in terms of GDP expectations during his budget presentation.
Yeah, so we heard the Premier talk about the economic impact during his budget address back in, I think, January. And everybody was wondering, well, what studies are we referencing? He's referencing a business case that's actually still being formulated, but the draft of the business case projects, you know, $3.5 billion in economic growth over the project's lifetime. There'd be a lot more hotel developments to get the increase in overnight visitors. However, these studies are based on a number of assumptions. One of the assumptions that's kind of puzzling is the assumption that flights will increase at the same rate as the airport on St. Thomas, but these two airports would be competing with each other. So how can you assume that they're going to have the same rates of growth? It also assumes that we're going to close deals with major airlines to bring in more flights. That obviously hasn't happened. It assumes that the U.S. economy keeps growing. So all these rosy projections are based on some assumptions, and I think that's important to point out.
I understand that there are quite a few studies or exploration documents
Yeah.
that are there that still haven't been placed in the public domain.
Yeah. So what we have in the public is the business case, which is like the overall document that breaks down some of the key elements of the project. However, there's a bunch of other studies that underpin the business case, the studies that, how the people came to their conclusion in the business case is based on dozens of other studies that, well, not dozens, but about 8 other studies that we haven't seen yet, traffic patterns and other studies like those.
We leave it there here on The Big Story. Until next week, on behalf of Kathy and Ken, I'm Peter Gray Coombs. But don't forget to check us out on our Facebook page, the YouTube channel, and jtvlive.net.